Hello, my name's Dan and welcome to my garden here in Essex in the southeast of the UK. So today I'm going to be making a composting video, and this is a follow-up of a video I made the other day at my allotment. So I'll link that video down below, you may be interested in that. So today I'm going to be making some compost, and I'm going to show you some really great ways, really practical ways that you can make some compost with some very readily available ingredients. So when discussing sources of nitrogen, greens, you can include fresh cut grass clippings in that, manures such as horse manure and chicken manure. Chicken manure is very high in nitrogen. You can also include weeds that you take out your garden, so things like dandelions, you could include that in there. Urine as well, that's quite an interesting one. We'll get onto that subject later on. And with regards to browns, carbon sources, you can include things such as sawdust in this, autumn leaves, so fall leaves, you can put those in there as well, cardboard, paper, and also garden soil. So there are plenty of examples of these, so do a bit of further research and you really can go into this and look at the different sources of greens and browns if it interests you. Before we get started with the information, if you like this video, please feel free to like it, share it with anyone you think may find it interesting or helpful, and you can also subscribe to my channel if you'd like to be notified when I put up any further videos. Sometimes people try to make their own compost and for whatever reason it doesn't work out. So today I'm going to show you two ways in which I make compost, and I've had good results with both of these. So the first one is going to be using this pot, and the other is going to be using a compost tumbler, otherwise known as a Dalek. So when describing compostable materials, compostable matter, generally they are split into two categories. So you've got greens, otherwise known as a nitrogen, and browns, otherwise known as a carbon. And the ratio I like to use is about 50% of each in terms of total amount, so 50-50. So when discussing sources of carbons and nitrogens, greens and browns, it has to be said that sometimes they can actually change. For example, these grass clippings which I cut yesterday are a green. They are a nitrogen source, but in a few weeks they will have literally turned brown in colour and they will be more of a carbon source by that point. So regarding sources of greens and browns, nitrogens and carbons for today's video, we're going to be using some very readily available ingredients. So we'll start off here with grass clippings cut yesterday, so they are a green, a nitrogen. And for browns we have some leaves here, so these are autumn leaves. These have recently fallen. These are actually hornbeam tree leaves, and they're looking to hornbeam trees. They're very interesting actually, so they are a brown. And here we have some cardboard. You want to use the plain cardboard here, and that's a lovely brown carbon source also. So I'm using this big tub here. So this is about a 60-litre tub, I would estimate. I actually picked this up at a gardening job and it's been a very useful gardening tool. So what I'll do is I'm going to put my grass clippings straight in here like that. There we go. Really can feel the warmth from the grass clippings. That'll be the nitrogen. Nitrogen is one of the things that helps to heat up the compost. So we'll put that in and we'll just make that nice and level like this. And there we are. I don't know if you can see that, the steam. There you go. I hope you can see that. I'll just move it and hopefully you can see the steam coming up from that. The next thing to go in is going to be some leaves. So we'll put those in. And hornbeam tree leaves, I'm going to put those in like this. Now, put them out like this, really nice, like that. And there we are. So I'm really going to tread this down. I want to get this as compacted as possible because I want to get as much grass and leaves in there. So I'm going to put some more leaves in, grass in. And there we are. So far we have 2 parts of grass to 1 part of leaves. And once again, we really get in there and we stamp it down. Then we'll have another load of leaves. I'm going to push those in like this. Get them in like that. So I want to get some sugar in here. So what I'm going to do is with these cooking apples, Actually, I picked these up on the ground of a job I did yesterday. They were just there. So I'm going to mash these up and stick them in there like this. And the sugar should help to get the bacteria going. If you don't have apples that you can use like this, you know, you could add just some standard white sugar, granulated sugar. You could put a bit of that in. There we go. And literally I'm just starting the process off a little bit by mashing these up with a lump hammer here. So I'm going to give it some water, probably about 5 litres, something like that. So here I have some compost from one of my tumblers, so I'll show you this. So it's really nice compost, and there'll be lots of microbes and things in there that'll be very beneficial for this compost here. So I'm going to introduce those to there and just put it in here like this. So the plan's going to be to turn this about once every 2 weeks now, up until probably around April, May time. So I'll take it all out and put it back in again every 2 weeks. A little bit of adjustment will end up happening depending on how it's going, but out and in again. You want to make sure you do that, because if you leave it festering like this, you could end up with a bit of a slimy mess at the bottom that doesn't smell too pleasant. So every 2 weeks turn this, and by around May time, hopefully you'll have at least some good mulch to use on your garden or your allotment or in your polytunnel or whatever. So for the purposes of doing this here, I used grass for the green and nitrogen and leaves for the carbon, the brown. So you could use the cardboard for the brown if you wanted. For the green, you could maybe use something such as kitchen waste. So things like, you know, old cucumber bits you chuck out, salad leaves, etc. Save them all up and you can use them. You can keep adding them sort of over time if you want. You don't have to use a pot as big as this. This sort of idea is to just get composting and use what's available, because for example, maybe one lives in a flat or something like that, or doesn't have much time, doesn't have a garden, then getting hold of grass clippings might be difficult. One might not have the time to go and harvest leaves such as this, but they may have kitchen scraps and they may have cardboard, because when you go shopping you can pick up cardboard, can't you, hopefully, and you can take that home. Shops hopefully will let you have that for free. So many different ways that you can go about doing this, and what you don't want to do is sort of force yourself into a sort of hole, if you will. Be adaptable and flexible with it, and you really can achieve some great mulch or some great compost. So earlier in the year I made a hotbed video where I showed you how I made a hotbed out of using grass clippings and also some cardboard. So I'll link that video down below, and it was in ton bags and it was very successful actually, and I've ended up with some really nice mulch which is now turning into compost, which I actually have scattered on the bed here where this chard is currently growing. So by the time I tipped it out here, it wasn't fully composted, very much like probably what you've just seen me make will be like, but then I spread it on the bed and it can finish its composting process on the bed, and I'll just show you what it looks like. I mean, it just looks absolutely grand and beautiful. So that's what this part of it looks like here. So patience and letting it finish the process, if it hasn't already broken down, can be a very worthwhile thing to do. This is another example of the mulch stroke compost that I made in the ton bags. I put it here as well, then I put these tubs on top, so I've actually got aubergines and some peppers here. When they're finished I'll be planting this out, made with broad beans, something like that. But I'll let you have a look at just how beautiful and lovely this looks, and there's loads of worms in here as well. It's really moisture retentive, and there'll just be so much nutrients in that. So patience is definitely a key thing. I also use the contents of the ton bags to mulch these fruit trees here. So I have a nectarine there, I have a peach here and an orange tree here, and I put the partially composted, partially broken down matter here from the ton bags, and look at that. So that'll be working in over the winter months hopefully to improve my yields next year and in subsequent years. So what you're doing is you're building the soil, you're building the growing medium, you're always adding to it, returning nutrients to the soil, and over time you should yield better and better plants hopefully. So we will discuss these compost tumblers. So I'm making some really lovely compost in these. You saw a little bit of it a moment ago. So in here goes things like kitchen scraps, grass clippings go in here, sawdust goes in here, cardboard, about roughly the 50-50 nitrogen, green, carbon, brown balance. I don't sort of agonise over it too much. As long as it's roughly 50-50, then it goes in there. Now, I don't turn my compost. Ideally, I'd turn it about once a month to get more oxygen in there, to make the process happen a little bit quicker, but to not turn these once. And this compost bin here I started about last September, so that's about 14 months, and it really is now a hungry compost. It breaks down really quickly, and as I stated, I do not turn it. I can't budget the time to do that, and many of you out there will be in the same position. So you can see at the top here, there's a lot of greens, a lot of nitrogen. So we've got grass clippings in there. You can see some citrus fruit, banana skins. There's a bit of a sort of a pumpkin mash in there from when I made the lantern the other day. Now what I want to do is actually, I refer to it as neutralise. That's not scientifically true probably, but I want to get some brown, some carbons in there, because that's starting to look a little bit slimy now. So we'll take the lid off of this one. Now I don't know if you could see that, but there's quite a lot of flies in there, and that can indicate the nitrogen being a little bit high. So if your nitrogen level is too high and it looks a bit slimy and sludgy, you can often get a smell off of it as well, which is sort of, it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like overly fruity towards the point of sort of rotting really. It just doesn't smell very nice. So I'm going to neutralise it now. So this one here, I'm going to put some of that cardboard in. So in that goes in there. Now, I don't bother mixing it up in there. I literally just put it in like that. And then the next sort of ingredients for this will be a nitrogen. Into this one, I'm going to put some of the sawdust. So tip that in and just sort of spread that about a bit. You may not have sawdust. This is from sort of logging work that I do. But you could use cardboard once again. So I'm going to put that in. Sawdust can take a while to break down, but because I'm a patient composter, I'm not particularly in a rush to make any of this, and it'll just break down as it does and yield what it does. So we will take a little bit out the bottom, and I'll let you have a look at the sort of compost I'm making with very little effort and just very readily available ingredients, and it's absolutely gorgeous and will be nutritious and incredibly moisture retentive. So look at that. One would really love that, wouldn't they? Spread on their garden. I'm going to put that in the top of the bin, put that back in there, just to sort of spread those microbes out a little bit. So if I turn that down there, look, you can see just how beautiful and lovely this is. Look at that. And as I stated, you know, not time consuming to make at all. So that compost you just saw, I probably made that in a year, maybe just over. Could have made it quicker probably if I'd turned it, but stated before, time budgeting does not allow for that. So with regards to size of compost container, a metre squared is very good, okay? That's about 3.3 by 3.3 feet. That way you can get some nice heat in there and it can heat up and kill weed seeds. But don't let that overwhelm you. If you have, if you're going to use a tumbler, the Dalek like you just saw behind the polytunnel there, or if you're going to do it in a container like I've done here, as long as you're doing some sort of composting, you can learn and you can build upon that. Now, if one wants to be really minimalist, what you can do is you can get grass like this. Now, this is actually great because it's mixed with some leaves already. They were on the lawn when I cut it, so that's brilliant. So a bit of green and brown nitrogen carbon already going on there. And literally, sometimes I just do this, get it and just put it on top of the growing medium where the plants are. Make sure you don't cover any crowns or anything because you don't want to stifle any growth or whatever or kill any plants. But this also acts as a weed suppressant, and this is also returning the nutrients to the soil as time goes by, because what will happen, I'll probably end up taking these out around April, May time, and then I'll plant it up with something like probably melons or aubergines, cucumbers, whatever, something like that. And this will be working in throughout the winter period, and it's further nutrifying the soil, building soil quality. And as I stated before, the trick is to keep adding over time. Return the nutrients to the soil, and hopefully you will end up getting, oh, this grapevine here, this is variety Riesling. Going to put some around that without touching the actual rootstock itself, and once again that'll neutrify that, and just keep building the soil, and you'll end up with stronger crops. So hopefully stronger you, because the crops you end up eating will be more nutritious. So it's a win-win really, and just going to continue covering that. So we will conclude the video today talking about adding urine to a compost heap. So urine can be very beneficial. So urine is a nitrogen, it's a green, it contains nitrogen, potassium and calcium, three things of which are very beneficial, or can be very beneficial to plants. So you saw my compost earlier on, so I apply about 2 or 3 urinations to that every day. So what I'm talking about now is not everybody's choice of things to do, but as you can see, I've had some very good results with that. So if you were living in a residential area and people could potentially see you adding urine to a compost bin in a very natural way, then maybe you would sort of urinate in a bucket or a pot or something and then put it on, just casually put it on, and no one will know what you're doing. So you might want to look into that. So with regards to when to add it, if your compost is looking, you know, that sort of slimy look I showed you, if it's not breaking down, you've got that sort of smell that I spoke about earlier on, where it's not breaking down, not changing much, and you might not want to add urine, you might not want to put more nitrogen on it. You may rather put something like more of a brown, so some cardboard or some sawdust on, or some autumn leaves, in order to get that process going again, the nitrogen and carbon mix. But if you've got plenty of, say, brown in there, so cardboard, sawdust, leaves, autumn leaves, something like that, and you really want to get it moving again, then applying some urine can be a very good idea. It can be very beneficial in winter, because if you think about it, quite often there's not too many nitrogen sources about during the winter if you're not cutting your grass, etc., etc. Of course you can get them, but you know, grass clippings consist of a very good component to add to compost, and if you're not cutting your grass, then you might not have so much of that. So urine, hopefully you've got plenty of it, if you know what I mean, so you can apply that. And if you think what's in it, you know, you go and buy fertilizer with that in, either organic or non-organic, but you've got plenty of it. You've got plenty that you can put in, and you can really enliven your compost with it. And also it saves you flushing the toilet, doesn't it? So you're going to save a bit of water, save a bit of money. There we are. So anyway, a bit of a warning with regards to applying urine. Now, it has been said that it could contain heavy metals. You know, maybe our diets are not as natural as they once were, medications, etc., etc. So you want to look into that before you use urine. You make your own decision on that. And also it could contain, you know, maybe infections, things such as salts as well, which could build up in the soil. Now, it has been said that if you are going to apply urine to a compost heap, that you do not use that compost until about a year after the last amount of urine has been put onto the heap. That way, hopefully, any nasties in there will hopefully have gone. So you could look into that, but as I stated before, do your own research. It may not be your cup of tea. Another good thing that you can add to a compost bin, I've done it before, is sugar water. So granulated sugar mixed up in some, hopefully, water from the water butt, rainwater, chuck that on, and that can be very good as well. Anyway, going to end the video now. I know I've given quite a bit of information here. If you've got any comments, questions, or whatever you'd like to ask, please feel free to comment down below. There will be some videos in the description box, so you can check those out if you're interested. Anyway, please feel free to like this video if you like it, share it with anyone you think may be interested, and please feel free to subscribe if you'd like to be made aware of when I put up any other videos. Enjoy your weekend. See you soon.